Well, if you would turn to the 4th chapter of the book of Colossians. We are going to finish this little book in this session. Colossians, beginning with verse 2, we ended last time with verse 1 that dealt with the whole idea of the slaves and servants or employees, however you want to look at it and deem it. But we're picking up with verse 2 that says, continue earnestly in prayer, being vigilant in it with thanksgiving. Meanwhile, praying also for us that God would open to us a door for the word to speak the mystery of Christ, for which I am also in chains, that I may make it manifest as I ought to speak. Walk in wisdom toward those who are outside, redeeming the time. And let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer each one. And in this session, I want to talk about experience, share, live. Experience, share, live. Remember that in St. John chapter 1 verse 1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And verse 14 talks about how the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. So we are to experience the Word, share the Word, and live the Word. Experience, share, live. It's very simple. Anytime you get people trying to complicate the gospel, it's because they don't understand it themselves. I'm just telling you. Now I want you to notice in just this verse here where it talks about verse 2, continue. Say continue. My God, that's such a power-packed word right there. I wish I had time to really unpack it. But have you ever noticed that getting started is half the battle? Have you ever noticed that some days just trying to get out of the bed is a significant accomplishment, just to be able to get out of the bed? It's just getting started. It's getting started working on the clothes, on the dishes. It's just getting started. It's just getting started. Half the battle is getting started, but the other half is getting finished. It's trying to stick to it until you can actually finish the deal. So most folks don't have a problem getting started. They have a problem continuing. I mean, I can't tell you how many folks have started diets and started budgets and started all kinds of new programs and things. They started school, they started this, they started that, they started this multi-level marketing. They started, but they never finished it. They never continued it. They started taking lessons with this. They started, with a foreign language. They started with an instrument. They started with a certain sport. And how many of them continued in that thing? So notice this in verse 2. I mean, this is a whole message in and of itself, just the word continue. Continue. You notice what Jesus said to the Jews who believed on him in St. John chapter 8 and verse 31 and 32. If you continue in my word, then are you my disciples indeed, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. If you continue, all of this was on the hinge. It was contingent upon their continuing. Continue in my word. Continue. Look at your neighbor. Tell him continue. See, don't give up. And the reason that he has to tell you to continue is because there is inevitably the urge to quit doing it, because the devil will start telling you that what you're doing is not working. Anybody ever been there? Has the devil ever discouraged anybody after you done prayed for people for a certain period of time, and he makes you just feel like, you know what, I'm just the devil say, just stop praying for them. It ain't helping. Give up on them. Just don't fool with it anymore. Just stop doing it. And he talks us out of stuff when we are so close. We are so close. So close. May I just remind you that David was, he had been in a bad place in a cave and was depressed. And 3 days later, he was anointed king. He was 3 days away from quitting everything. But thank God that David encouraged himself in the Lord. Little did he know that 3 days after the deepest depression of his life, he was 3 days away from his miracle, 3 days away from his promotion, 3 days away from Samuel coming and actually anointing him, installing him as a king in Judah. It was amazing. 3 days away from his miracle. 3 days prior, he's sitting in a cave with suicidal thoughts, depressed. 3 days away from his greatest miracle. And it was so dark. And 3 days later, you'd be surprised what God can do in your life in 3 days. My God, somebody in this house right now, somebody listening right now needs something to happen in 3 days. My God, I'm telling you, when you set your faith, I'm just telling you that anointing of God can breathe on you, and in 3 days, God can give you every turnaround that you could ever need in a million years. In 3 days, God can turn it around. I'm just telling you, the whole lot of your life, your faith, an answer can go from a no to a yes in 3 days. Somebody can go from crazy to sanity in 3 days. I'm just here to tell you that God can shift your whole mindset in 3 days. Something that you were ready to throw up your hands up. In 3 days, God can cause it to turn around. Doctors can say that this thing is beyond hope now. And 3 days later, the very person that they said that wouldn't come out of it would be up walking, sitting up in the bed, talking about bring me some soup, get my clothes, bring my checkbook in here. You just don't know what God can do. Anybody ever had God to do something miraculous and switch something around in just 3 days in your life? He's able to just do it in a moment of time. And sometimes you don't know how close you are when it seems so far. So that's why the devil would try to get you to quit. And that's why the word is continue. Somebody touch your neighbor and say continue. Continue, continue. If you continue in my word, if you continue, don't give up on this thing. You know, it just, I don't know what to say to people when folks say to me, you know, well, I've been praying. You know, as though that doesn't work, and it's like, do you have anything else? It's like they've given up, and it's like, well, I done already prayed. Pray again. Continue. You don't pray until you get tired. You pray until you get through. You pray until something happens. You pray until. My God, if you can ever, if there's sometimes you can just ever pray until, if you can ever continue in this thing. I'm just telling you, God, I'm just telling you that there are certain things when I understand that I am duty bound to pray for something, I have something, a knowing down on the inside of me that realizes that this is not just human emotion. This is a God thing that he's connected here. God put it in my heart to start praying for a person. I prayed for them for 10 solid years before I saw them walk down the aisles of the church and give their hearts to Jesus. 10 years. In an unrelenting way, God wouldn't let me stop praying for them. And I'm just telling you, I put prayer pressure on them for 10 years. Can you imagine? Some folk can't pray for people for 10 days. They won't even pray. They think if they pray for 10 minutes that they've had revival. I prayed 10 years. You know why? Because I know about continuing in something. I know about the continuing. I know about when you really believe something. To believe means to commit to. Are you listening? To believe means to commit to. You show what you believe by showing what you're committed to. What you're committed to. You know, I chose this girl here 29 years ago. Continue. We're still continuing. Having the time of our life. Wonderful, you know. And so, don't quit. Don't quit. Just continue. You have to continue in this thing. I'm just telling you, continue in it. Continue. And so I just want you to see that if you just continue. Just notice that word continue. I want you to notice just certain key words in this verse here. Continue. Here's another word I want you to notice. It's the word prayer. Notice that word. Now, if you got one of those Bibles, you're not ashamed to, mark it up. Underline continue. Underline prayer. Notice, continue earnestly in prayer. Continue, prayer. Continue, then underline prayer. Prayer. Effective evangelism begins with earnest prayer. Effective evangelism begins with earnest prayer. Earnest prayer. I was downtown today in a summit conference. Incredible leaders from India. And in empirical data, just looking at it, they discovered, they went to churches and found out how much time the average church member there was spending in prayer, and then they drew a correlation to the growth of the church. Now they've got 1.2 billion people there, and Christianity is growing rapidly in India. And they discovered that those that prayed 1 hour a day in the church, their churches were experiencing a 50% growth. And they went to another group, were praying 2 hours a day. They were experiencing 100% growth in their churches. And the only difference was prayer. The only difference was prayer. Billy Graham said that there are 3 secrets to revival. Prayer, that's number 1. Number 2 is prayer. Oh, did I say that? Then number 3 is prayer. Prayer, prayer, prayer. That's why he says continue in prayer. You do realize that India is a country with they proverbially say that it has 14 million gods. No wonder it takes prayer to do war in the heavenlies over all of these kinds of satanic and demonic spirits that have the minds of the people blinded. So you got to pray, because you're warring against spiritual wickedness in the heavenlies. Are you listening? And the philosophies of individuals that has blinded the people, and the traditions, ancestral worship, all kinds of things that you're trying to cut through. And you don't do that. You cannot, listen, I don't care how much you understand certain things, you cannot rationalize and use logic to reason people out of something that they were not reasoned into. Are you listening? So you have to use the power of prayer. Have you ever talked to a bonehead? And you think, I've seen poor little wives trying to talk to their husbands, bonehead.